Hello, Spookies, and welcome to Rick or Treat Horrorcast, hosted by yours truly, Ricky J. Duarte. My guest today is an icon around the tri-state area, a New York City horror host, and an all-around terrific fellow. Welcome to the show, Uncle Spooky.
Hi. So excited to be here tonight.
Hey, welcome to the show, Uncle Spooky. How are you doing today?
Pretty good. Very excited to be here. I can't tell you. Thanks for inviting me.
I'm so excited to have you.
We've been talking about doing this forever, and you've been giving me lists of movies, giant long lists of movies, and I'm like, whoa, my God, which one? There's like something like, do I watch one I haven't seen before? What do I do? So I just went for my old favorite. I said, let's get Jessica to death on that list, and jumped all over it. Thanks for saying yes.
Jessica has, in fact, been scared to death. This is a hell of a movie. I'm really glad that you picked it. We had talked in the past, I think, about doing Butcher Baker Nightmare Maker, and then we talked about The Haunting, which are also excellent. Actually, this movie today, we're talking about Let's Scare Jessica to Death, has kind of like connections to The Haunting. We'll get into a little later.
100%.
But before that, I would love to hear a little bit about Uncle Spooky. Who the hell are you? How did you get your start? Why are you so spooky?
That's a tough one to ask, because it's kind of been loitering around Queens and the cemetery belt for a couple of years. A guy in a dream. Kind of wondered if I could make a go of this sort of thing. I always loved horror hosts, but it was kind of a dead art, like straight acting. Like nobody does it anymore. Well, back then, you know what I mean? And I was like, I don't know, Vira was doing it, and that Zachariah guy, he just died recently. He was still kind of going. And then Svengoolie. I can never say his name. I'm never gonna get on the show. It's like Italian name.
Svengoolie.
But Svengoolie. Oh my God, he's great. I love him. And I went to San Francisco around Halloween, like 2003, and I saw Miss Monster. She was in her melons, her monstrous melons. And it was like this beautiful green woman with red hair and these two melon puppets that were and she was up on the Castro Theater stage, and they showed what's the word? Night of the Creeps, which I'd never seen before at that time. So it was a perfect night. And I didn't know it, but a seed was planted that night that just kept going. And it was like this Rubik's Cube of trying to figure out how to do this. Where can I do it? What can I do with it? How do I do it? There's no audience, not audience for it. There's no demand for it. You know what I mean? It's like not like this. Where do I go with it? How do I broach it to people? You know what I mean? And I'm not super computer literate, so like Twitch and Zoom and all those things. Like I really had to learn how to work with those. But it took me like 15 years to try to get it up to bring it to a bar and say, listen, I want to do this live. And they were like, no. and I just kind of had to kind of weasel my way in there. And it was the old Eastern Bloc.
Oh, yeah.
And over on Avenue A, little dungy, grimy little cruisy bar.
Oh, I know it well. Let me say, I know the bathrooms at Eastern Bloc well.
The bathrooms were great.
They were.
Bathrooms, and they had stools that said sloppy bottom.
Yep. Yeah.
all little worded
Oh,
stools.
it was so scummy. I loved
And
it.
nobody came. And no, not too many people came. I worked with, I was doing it with Michael T. I don't know if you know him. He's sort of a downtown Zen DJ at a beauty bar, and he's a big horror guy, and he's a huge performer. Does like rock shows, sings like, he's got like a David Bowie-esque thing. Great act.
Amazing.
And I've known him since like 1985. Since the first time I ever went out in Manhattan, I feel like I spotted him and knew he was trouble. And somehow he got me into this place. He was like, let's do it together. So we would do double features, and maybe 5 people would come. It was an empty bar. And I'd never really got up on stage too much. So it was like, thanks for coming. You know, it's very slow going. I'm still kind of like that, stage truth. And that was kind of starting to wind down. They were taking it over. They were closing it down. They were going to turn it into, I forget what it's called now, but it's like a burlesque kind of
Club Cumming. Alan Cumming. Yeah, Alan Cumming bought it. Now it's Club Cumming.
I have a great story about him.
I think every gay in New York has a great story about Alan Cumming, but tell me yours.
My very first time doing Uncle Spooky at Eastern Bloc, and they're like, you know, you got to be there at 8 o'clock. So I was there at 8 o'clock, and I was like, you know, I had everything ready. I had my bingo boards, and I don't know, I must have been doing the bingo boards already. And it was all set, and it was like panicky, and it was like, you know, butterflies in the stomach, and it was like, here I am, blue. You know what I mean? How's this gonna go? And I get there, and it's like a nice sized crowd, and like, oh my god, what is this? What? How is this happening? But it wasn't. It turns out they had booked the space for Alan Cumming was in some TV movie about I don't know, a gay in the 80s, and it wasn't, you know, bad things were happening to him, and they had rented out that bar. This was going to be a big cruising scene in the bar, and we couldn't start the movie till after Alan Cummings shot the scene. But Alan Cummings wasn't there. He was late. He was taking his time getting to the shoot. So I'm sitting there, and I'm like, and I can't say anything because the bar's making money. You know, all these extras are buying drinks, and that's kind of what the bar's about. So, you know, I kind of just kept my mouth shut, you know, biding my time. And then he finally shows up, and everybody's like all over him. And I was like, and I was looking at him like, he doesn't know me from Adam or anything. But I was like, hey, can I get a selfie? And he was like, no. And I was like, you fucking piece of shit. You can tell me my first. So I did this whole thing where I was just like kind of did like this selfie with him with my phone, and then just lined him up in the background. I got this picture of me with like an uninterested Alan Cumming right behind me.
You got your fucking selfie.
I got my fucking selfie. I didn't need his arm around me or nothing.
Nah.
This one was earned.
So
that was great. And then that kind of wrapped up. And then I got a gig at this little coffee shop in Long Island City, and that blew up. That was like kind of my beginning. I just ran around, and I'd hang posters on lampposts, and you know, people kind of trickled in. And then right before, and it was slowly growing, and it was really fun. And we'd have, you know, the place would make popcorn for us, and they had this like dried cricket thing going. So, you know, popcorn with crickets or no crickets, you know, it was a little gag.
Cool.
And it was great, and it was fun, and it was growing. And then the biggest one was right before they shut down from COVID. It was huge, and it turned out to be a super spreader event.
Oh no!
Everybody got sick. Yeah.
Oh man, look at you.
And what happened? So then that place, they never really recovered. They had, you know, that COVID just changed the whole marketing thing. So I never really went back there. And then somehow I was able to jump to Fire Island, and I got a good 5-year run out there, and that was an amazing job. And now I'm at where am I now? Ridgewood, Queens, a little bar called the Flying Fox Tavern, which is, if you've never been, is really fun. It's a little horror themed, kind of like an Irish pub food kind of place. Very cool. Not easy to get to, but very cool. And the people are great, and it's a great fit. And now I still do my so once COVID started, I started. I figured out how to do Zoom thing, and I started doing movies over Zoom, and so now I do that once a week, and I just never stopped. And that was really great for like when everything in the world was shut down. That's kind of when I had the best audience there, because they had nothing else to do. They
They're
were stuck at
captive.
home, desperate.
Wow, that's incredible. When you talk about Fire Island, that is how I came to hear about you and know who I was on Fire Island for the first time 5 or 6 years ago. I was singing in a show, and there were posters all around. You were hosting the Texas Chainsaw Massacre because it was August 18th, that's the day that the movie takes place on, right? And so the plans that I had were not lining up with being able to make it to the show, but I was obsessed. I was like, I have to meet this spooky person. So I was staying at Big Dick's Halfway Inn on the Grove, which for those of you who don't know it's a really cool bed and breakfast.
Gone.
Each room has a different thing. Is it gone?
Gone.
No, really? I haven't been out there in a few years.
I stayed there too. It was really cool.
It was. Well, they had like an outdoor shower, and then they had a jacuzzi in the back. And I was in the jacuzzi with a couple of other people. We were all naked, and suddenly this blue man comes in the back behind behind Big Dick's Halfway Inn, and we all go, oh, it's Uncle Spooky. And you had no idea who we were, and you were looking for somebody, and it was not us. And you said hello, you told some jokes, and then you turned around and walked away. And we were like, what the fuck just happened?
Got your own show.
Anyway,
I was staying there that night.
That's funny. That's hilarious.
I remember that hotel very well.
And then this just so happened years later through
trivia. No, that's how I met you. I feel like through horror trivia.
Yeah, so all the spooky gays go to horror trivia here in New York at Rock Bar, and that's where we ended up just like hitting it off. And turned out we had many friends in common, and here we are now.
It worked out pretty good, not so bad.
I'd say so.
Man, I wish I'd known you on Fire Island. That would have been so amazing.
I know.
Which room did you have at the Big Dick's?
It was the.
Did you have the room with the sling?
No, there was no sling in my room.
I had the room with the sling, but what was I doing? I just had my luggage on it, so it was easy to kind of go through. It's like a nice, good height to kind of ruffle through.
Perfect. Yeah, and you can probably kind of prop it open and leave it open. It's great. It can second as a dresser. If I had a sling in my room right now, it would be covered in dirty laundry.
Laying it with the remote, trying to get the good TV show.
Yeah. So where you're at Flying Fox Tavern now, what nights do you have shows there?
So I'm doing what's so I do like the fourth Sunday of the month. I figured because sometimes it's 5 Sundays, and I didn't want to do the last one, so I thought let me do 4 because there's always 4 Sundays in a month. So I'm always on the 4th Sunday. And then I just started this thing called Seance. I'm working with these guys, and it's kind of like a burlesque, like a horror burlesque thing. And I do my shtick in the beginning, and then I help MC it. And it's amazing acts from a lot of like I don't want to say it yet, but it's like it's a lot of drag, but like it's kind of like girls doing horror drag, but it's all mixed up. There's guys too, and it's every whatever's going on now, every little, and they're all in it, and it's very interesting, and they all do a number, and it's kind of it's amazing to see what the kids are up to. Very, very exciting. I'm on borrowed time. These kids are gonna replace me in no time.
You're training them up well. Where Seance? Where is this show?
So that's a little bit all over the place too. A lot of it's in Flying Fox. They do it like a Saturday brunch thing. So it starts at 12, 2 hours of a movie. I think we're doing the next one's September 2nd. We're doing Saw because Saw 10 is coming out.
Yeah.
And I've actually never seen Saw, so I was gonna have to watch it this week and make a bingo board. So
the first one, I like the first 2. The third one's okay, and then they just go, it's just off the rails. I can't, and the story is so confounded now, it's impossible to keep up with. But this new one, it looks like it's going to be a hit.
They all look like they're going to be a hit. The one, do you remember Scream Queens 2? It was that was the second season, but it was a show on VH1. and it was like what was her name? Who's the girl from the remake of My
Oh,
Bloody Valentine? And
oh, Jamie King.
Jamie King. I would have never got that. I can't think of it. Right, terrible. But she was the host, and it was 10 girls, and one of them gets killed off each week. And the girl who won the winner of that was supposed to get like a starring role in the next Saw movie, and that was all they talked about. And so the girl won. She was really great, and it was great drama through the whole thing. And then you watch the movie, and she was in it for 2 seconds.
Oh
And I
no.
was so bummed. Really, and it was almost unrecognizable. I kind of had to like rewind. It was like, was that her? And I was like, Hollywood sucks. They made her drink blood, and that's all she got.
The most grueling audition process for the most thankless role.
Felt very bad for her.
Oh man. Well, all right. Speaking of horror movies, have you seen anything recently? Anything you want to recommend, or read a book, or played a video game?
I sure have. Let's see. I just snuck in to go see the last voyage of the Demeter.
Yeah, let's talk about this movie because I saw it last night. No major spoilers, but let's talk about this.
Fine. Okay. So what I loved about it, I love the setting. I love the boat was great. The ocean was like, you just felt trapped on his vessel, and the vessel was beautiful. I mean, like just really great. Just a big, great. It was like a haunted house kind of. It was just a great set, like creaking. Big sails. Like it was great set, great time. Like historically, what do you call those things? Historical drama. You know what I mean?
Like a period
really
piece.
Nailed the time period, I thought. And it was brutal. It was kind of, it was like, I mean, I know how, I think everybody kind of knows how it ends. You're supposed to know how it ends, kind of. And it kind of, it's stuck it. It kind of, it was, I had problems with it, of course. I always do. For some reason, I always have like a issue with it. And, but I loved a lot of it. I wish it wasn't 2 hours. By the last half hour, I was like, oh, come on, wrap it up. What do you kill them? Moving along. But I loved the Dracula. He had a little Toby Hooper Salem's Lot vibe in him in one scene.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I love that. What'd you think?
I did not love it. This chapter is famous in the world of literature. It's a very scary chapter. I think it's the best part of the book Dracula. I love the whole book, don't get me wrong. And the screenplay has been kicking around for a couple of decades now, and it's changed hands so many times. And I like this director. He directed The Autopsy of Jane Doe, and he directed Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, right? He's done some really cool.
And The Troll, right? Wasn't it like a troll movie?
Maybe. I'm not familiar. I can't think of it.
This giant troll thing. I didn't see it, but
well, something about this, there were so many kind of gliding camera shots and panning camera shots, and there was no stillness. And for me, that really didn't allow for much tension to build. It relied so heavily on the same jump scare tactic, which is somebody walks, everything gets quiet, the person turns around, and Dracula jumps out at them. And that happened over and over and over again. None of these scares were earned. But when you say it was brutal, you're completely right. Some of those kills were very surprising, particularly one character that they killed off, and I could not believe what I was looking at. Didn't think that was going to happen. Yeah. And then, but there's something about the pacing. Yes, I don't mind a 2-hour movie. This one, it did. At the hour and a half mark, I was like, this is not ending anytime soon, is it?
You know one odd thing that bothered me is, can I tell, because it's kind of, it happens in every version, and it's in the novel, and it's I don't know if it's a spoiler, but
hey spookies, hold on just a moment. We are actually going to spoil something, so if you don't want to hear it, skip ahead, I don't know, like 30-45 seconds. All right, here we go.
You know how the captain is sort of chained?
Yes.
In every version, including the book, he's roped into the big steering wheel. What do you call that thing?
The wheel, I guess, right?
And he's roped in with the crucifix. And right before, the guy lets him down, like lets him off the hook. And I'm like, what are you doing? You got to hook him back up there. That's his whole thing. He's got to be in that position, like at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
So that really that bugged me.
That was
no reason to let him down.
We're not going to say the exact ending of the movie, but those last 45 seconds were just like, what are you doing? This is not the book. Like this is, but it's like, what are you going to do? Make up new Dracula fan fiction with this ending? It was frustrating.
It was super frustrating. But you're right, it wasn't scary enough. Like it should have been. And what I found out, it was a lot of practical effects, they said, but it didn't look practical to me. It looked super CGI. Like whenever they
it's
close,
a mix, and I do feel like they had some really solid practical effects going that then they just wanted to enhance with CGI. And it's like, no matter what you do, your CGI fire is never going to look good. Why aren't you just using real fire? Why aren't you using practical blood? Like this fake blood that you're adding to it looks bad. You know, it takes me right out of the movie. So, the director said that he compared it to Alien on a ship. And for me, I can't, because the trailer showed what Dracula looks like. It shows him flying. It shows him with wings. So I'm going into this movie already knowing that this is Nosferatu mixed with a bat. And the movie Alien doesn't show the creature until the movie's almost over. And, and that movie carries tension up until that point really successfully.
It had all the ingredients there. It just wasn't scary.
Yeah, it should have been, but damn it. All right, well,
and then bombed at the box office. 45 million to make. It only made 7 million, and I feel bad because I snuck into it.
That's all right. They got my $19 fucking discount money that I want back. I was very disappointed. Once I saw the trailer, I suspected it wasn't going to be what I wanted it to be. And unfortunately, last night, you know what I do recommend, though, and I'll make this quick, the Haunted Mansion movie, so much better than anybody thought it was going to be. I really had a lot of fun with it. If you enjoy the ride, if you know the ride, you're going to have a blast looking for all of these Easter eggs. Jamie Lee Curtis is having a ball, crystal pun intended, as Madame Leota. And Rosario Dawson's great. Even Owen Wilson, who I can't normally stand, does a good job of playing Owen Wilson dressed as a priest. I don't know. And the Keith Stanfield, the man who's starring in this movie, he is so good. He's so funny. And the movie does an incredible job. And he makes like grieving and sad look really sexy somehow. And the movie does a great job of kind of dealing with grief at a level that young audiences could understand. I think this is a great example of gateway horror that we don't get a lot of these days, especially from Disney. My taste in horror tends to come from like the end of the movie Fantasia when Chernobog is on the mountain, or like the Legend of Sleepy Hollow part of Ichabod and Mr. Toad. That's what piqued my interest in scary imagery, and I feel like Disney shies away from that lately, and they did not in this new movie. So I do recommend it.
I kind of wanted to see it, and I'm glad for the recommendation, because I'm always a big Haunted Mansion fan.
Yeah, I'd love to know what you think of it after you've seen it. But hey, why don't we go ahead and get started talking about the movie at hand? Let's go Rick or treating.
From 1971, released actually kind of like August. Where was it? I just had the date on it. August 27th, 1971. So almost, 81, 91, 2001, almost 50 years ago, right? This movie's over 50 years old. Is that possible? Or is my math all fucked up?
50 years. That's insane.
Early 70s horror. It's got its own flavor.
It does. And I love it. I love this era. It's kind of, for me, this movie actually has the feeling of dread that this movie builds so successfully actually does remind me of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Now, you never see anything. It's not anything like that movie. And yet that early 70s kind of post-Vietnam, post-hippie era and time in horror is really fascinating to me. It's also, there are a lot of movies about kind of the repression of women and their sexuality. And we're going to get into the the lesbian longing lesbian undertones of this film for sure.
I don't know.
we we are talking Let's Scare Jessica to Death. The film, as you mentioned, was released in 1971 and had an all-star cast of people that no one's ever heard about. Zora Lampert plays Jessica. Now, she was a stage actor primarily and did a lot of TV work. This was, to my knowledge, her only leading role. She did win, I think it was an Emmy for Kojak after this.
Yes. And I knew her as the Goya Bean Lady from, if you really want to, like, after you watch this movie, do a little YouTube search on Goya Bean Lady, and you'll see pictures like the commercials of her are like these fast edit, and she just looks fucking nuts.
Wait, she's like,
and then she's talking about, she's like kidney beans, Goya beans. You have to watch it. It's the funniest thing you ever seen.
Like the Goya brand of food? That's hilarious.
She's like the spokesperson for Goya Bean.
Hey, all you Goya Bean people out there.
That's us.
Those great Goya beans you love.
That's them.
I hate to tell you this. They're good for you.
Good for us.
They're high potassium.
Like bananas.
They're high fiber.
Like bran.
They're high protein.
Oh, like meat.
High protein but no cholesterol. None.
Good for Goya.
I didn't know that.
And there's like 15 commercials with her. Oh my god! If you want, if the most entertaining thing, that it's like the edits are so quick that the commercials used to freak me out.
Now, if everybody had a can of Goya beans in the house, they could all start that healthy eating right now.
So, and I remember seeing the commercials way before I saw this movie. So
I
like,
cannot wait to watch those commercials.
That's all I know.
Goya. Oh, boy.
Barton Heyman plays her husband, Duncan. Kevin O'Connor plays their friend Woody, and Gretchen Corbett plays, she's credited as girl, but she is, I mean, the mute girl.
Oh, Woody.
We have Mary Claire Costello as Emily. And then finally Alan Manson as Sam Dorker, the antiques dealer. When was the first time you saw this movie?
So I believe I saw it late night TV. I saw it like a bunch of times. Because it was always like a late night stable, like a spooky movie night. I mean, a spooky movie, like usually after midnight, I would stay up and I would try to watch it, and I could never get through it because it was always on so late, and you'd start it and it's so dreamy that it would always put me to sleep. So I never knew how it ended for like years, and I'd always try to watch it, and it's got a great beginning and a great middle. And it's great. It's a great movie, but it's kind of slow and it gets in your head and it's dreamy. And it was just, I could never stay awake through it. So I want to say like early 80s. I had a book here. I was trying to fit Night Frights from Channel 9. And it has cool. Like all the movies that is played in New York. And it's not on here. It never played Channel 9. So I was a little bummed about that. I was going to try to look that up. And I was Googling all over, like, when was the New York premiere? And I mean, for TV, and I could never find that information out for you. But that's how I watched it. Like, for some reason, did you remember we were around when Mary Tyler Moore was on it? Like, they would show 3 episodes at like 2:00 in the morning. It was like 3 episodes. So it was around that time that I watched it, and the beginning is so creepy and so like atmospheric, and
it is.
It's such a great movie. It really hooks you from the beginning, I think.
This was one that my mom really enjoyed. I've said this before on the podcast. My childhood, when it comes to horror, was very back and forth. Sometimes we were overly religious, and then sometimes we were able to watch horror movies. And this was one that she remembered from, when she was, I guess she was probably late teens, early 20s when this came out. And she really loved it. And so she shared it with me, and I hadn't seen it since I was a child. And then I think it was during lockdown, it was on Shudder, and I was very excited to watch it because I had one image specifically burned into my brain. It's when Woody is discovered on the tractor. And that was in my brain since I was a child. And so I watched it as an adult, and I was blown away at how this movie is able to, just like you say, it's like a dream that lulls you in and you don't know what's happening. And I love that by the end of the movie, you still don't know what happened. I really think that that's an important aspect that,
oh my God,
this movie's not for everybody. It is what it's a slow burn. I think it's the kind of movie where you have to put your phone in the other room, you have to sit down, and you really just have to watch this movie. And if you're the right kind of person, I think it's going to successfully take you somewhere. The music is hypnotic, performances are incredible. Zora as Jessica is so good. You really believe her.
So good. Oh my god! And you just want to hug. You just want to help her, like you. And it really starts off just that first the opening with the hearse going down with the love, the hearse with the little 60s love me. I don't know. It said love something on it, some 60s saying, and it pulls over on the side of a cemetery, and she jumps out, and she looks fun. She jumps out the back, and she's like, "Yeah, well, just give me a second," and she skips off into the cemetery, and she's doing grave rubbings and something I always wanted to do, but it turns out it's totally illegal now.
Yeah, you have to have a permit to do it. I did it once when I was very, very little, and that was it. And yeah, now it's you really can't do it. The movie was made.
You gotta be really slick.
Yeah, the movie was made on a budget of 125,000. So this was super, super low budget, even for back then. Filmed in like around Old Saybrook, Connecticut. The house actually still stands. It's abandoned and like dilapidated. It's a stunning exterior, this home. Interiors were shot somewhere else, but like it's the kind of house that if I had money, man, I would buy it and fix it up. And I mean, it would cost $1 bajillion. I'm sure it's falling apart, but it's just stunning.
Oh yeah, no, you couldn't. It's like a ruin. This guy. So I showed Let's Scared Jessica to Death on one of my Spookoramas, and this guy who's my viewers are international, Australia, UK, and Connecticut, and one of them was from knew the house, had seen the house, and it's like from across an expressway at a gas station, you can see the house like through the trees. But that's as close as you can get to it because it's all like cordoned off, and it's private property, and can't do not enter stuff, and they don't watch anywhere near it, which makes me want to go even harder.
There are a series of YouTube videos of people sneaking in. As I was researching, there were like a surprising amount of videos of this movie has a following. It's not well known, and the people who do know it are big fans. Rod Serling, who created the Twilight Zone, calls it, I mean, he loved this movie, talked about it as though it was one of his favorites. It's also listed as one of Stephen King's favorite horror movies.
Yes, he mentioned it now. In that book, Dance Macabre, that he wrote.
I haven't read that in forever. Yeah, he
talks about it. It's like oh my God, it holds up.
The screenplay started out as like a slapstick comedy feature. It was about hippies being eaten by like a lake monster. And then when the director took over.
Yes, what was the name of it? It had a great name.
It drinks hippies' blood.
It drinks hippies' blood.
Yeah. Director John D. Hancock took over under the stipulation that he would be able to do whatever he wanted to with the script. And so he had just been nominated for an Oscar for a short film that he had made. And he took the script and
which I watched today.
How was it? I am loving how prepared you came.
It was. I only got about halfway through it. It's called Sticky My Fingers, Fleet My Feet. And I have to say, it's all New York locales. It's like takes place in like Central Park, and it's like an older guy, not an older guy, but way younger than me. Like probably a guy in his 30s, who plays touch football in a park, and everybody wants him to grow up, and that's kind of but the way it's filmed, it seems like a nice story, but it's filmed kind of creepy. Like the opening shot is like just like this hand coming at you on the camera, and it freezes, and I'm like, that's terrifying. So we had some early skills. Sorry, he didn't win. I don't know what year that was. Do you know any year? Any idea what year he was nominated?
No idea. No, I don't know.
Had to be the 60s. It felt very 60s, and you recognize a few faces in it too if you see it. But anyway, that was well worth the nomination.
Good. Well, this movie would actually get him the job of directing Jaws 2, which he got fired from because he wanted it to be an intense psychological thriller. And the filmmakers, like the producers, wanted it to be more horror driven and, more in the vein of what was being made at the time. And we got what we got from that.
Also, they because Lorraine Gray, like they wanted her to have it. She was like, I want to be on the boat when they go looking for the the kids at the end. He was like, no, you're not getting. What are you doing on the boat? You're not going to be on the boat. Like he was trying to write her character down, but she was like going out or married to like one of the producers of it. And so they just, and then he fired one. Well, there was a whole different young cast when he was doing it, and fired one of the girls who also turned out to be a girlfriend of one of the producers. So they were like, get rid of this guy.
Oh
He's not doing the monster movie we want. He was doing like and only one shot remains in the movie. Do you know which one?
No, tell me.
Such creepy. Oh my God. And it's almost like lifted from Let's Scare Jessica to Death. It's when it's after the big hotel opening, and I think they do kind of a pullback from it, and they're showing the party, and then it kind of pulls back, and they're showing like the I don't know, the bay or the lake or the water, whatever it is, to the boats are kind of docked in, and you just kind of see this mysterious thing kind of under the water. Like you can't really even tell what it is for a while, and then like the fin cuts the water and kind of heads toward town, and that's like it's like his first shot, Bruce's first Brucette's first shot in the movie that you still see her.
Yeah, definitely lifted from Let's Scare Jessica to Death. The lake scene specifically from this movie is what I understand is what got him noticed for Jaws 2. But did we even say his name yet? John D. Hancock. John D. Hancock is the guy who directed this movie. I don't think we said it yet. When he reworked this script,
you did. You opened it.
It became a much more. The film is very psychological thriller drama with almost like horror undertones, right? It's like we are almost watching a horror movie. It is a horror movie, but it's very under the surface of what we're looking at.
It feels like a crazy lady movie for a while.
Yes.
Like it's big on. They talk about gaslighting. Like this is like a big. I mean, are we doing spoilers on this?
We're gonna go through the plot in a minute. So do you want to?
No. I was gonna say, but they talk about it being a big like gaslighting movie, and you can kind of see that because I guess it's Emily trying to gaslight her a little bit, trying to push her over the edge.
The brilliance of this movie is
she doesn't need much cushion.
No, she's already standing at that edge. You don't know if this is in her head or if this is really happening. And after we go through this plot, I'd love to know what you think about it. If you think it's really happening, if it's all in her head.
Anything else you want to talk about? The cinematography, which was pretty amazing.
For sure.
Guy was Robert M. Baldwin. And I think cinematography-ish, it's pretty freaking beautiful. Because, I mean, like the setups, like the house, the lake, all the graveyard, like it's got this hazy kind of feel to it. This hazy, I mean, it's a kind of a daytime horror. It's not a lot happening at night.
Very much so. And there are day for night shots in this that really, really work. Like the day for night adds to the dreamlike feel and the is this real, is this not feel,
It is. Oh. And I don't know if you know this, the soundtrack was one of the first ones to ever use like synth music.
I read that.
So
it's
if
really
you listen to it. It's got like a slow piano, and then every now and then it's got this like sort of synthy thing going on. The music's really unsettling, I find.
It is. It's really an incredible soundtrack. It adds so much to it, and it feels so disjointed. And these percussive like synth sounds coming in with this beautiful piano melody is off-putting, but in like the best way.
Yes. So let's get into it. We're going to talk about this movie.
Let's talk about this movie.
We're going to talk about the plot. We're going in.
We open on a golden lake, and Jessica is sitting alone in a rowboat, and we hear the voiceover. I sit here and I can't believe that it happened, and yet I have to believe it. Dreams or nightmares, madness or sanity. I don't know which is which. What a fucking opening to a movie.
Oh my God. And she's like just like a sad ruined thing in a rowboat. Just like her head's in her hands, and she's just looking off like she's been destroyed.
So from there,
Anyway,
we cut to we cut to people are loading into a hearse, what looks like a coffin, into the back of this hearse. And then from there, the hearse drives down a highway, beautiful autumnal leaves all over the place. I mean, Connecticut's gorgeous. You know, I lived there for a little bit.
Uh-huh.
And we get our title card, "Let's Scare Jessica to Death," with quotation marks, which I love. This hearse pulls up to a cemetery, and the back door opens, and Jessica, who's bubbly and excited, hops out. And she's got some wax paper rolled up, and she climbs out and she yells, "I'll just be a minute," to the other people in the hearse. And she runs into the cemetery. And we see on the door of this hearse, like you said, the word love is painted kind of small in red letters, very like 60s, that 60s almost cursive font, you know? We meet Duncan and Woody. Now, Duncan is the husband, and Woody is a friend of theirs. Duncan mentions, "Don't worry, the farm will be great for her."
Woody's hot.
Woody is so hot. Oh my God. I'm so glad you thought so too.
Woody's so hot.
So hot in like kind of a dumb way, you know? He's kind of got himbo written all over him.
Yeah, like he's got like a big bottom lip. He's got like a full head of hair, like big eyebrows. Like, I don't know how Emily doesn't do. All right, we'll get to that.
Well, we'll get to that. We hear a voiceover, and this movie is interspersed with voiceovers throughout, and it's so effective. Actually, John Hancock was inspired by The Haunting, 1964, a lot for this movie, which is where we get the voiceovers, because Eleanor Vance in that movie is talking to herself in her head throughout. And we also get kind of the pounding on the walls in one scene. And
little Julie Harris.
Julie Harris is fabulous in that movie. And then the angels on the grave rubbings from the walls staring at her is very reminiscent as well of that particular wall scene in The Haunting.
Oh, you're totally right. You're totally right.
So it's there for sure.
Oh, that scene is so great.
Another movie that, you know, does not have special effects and is effectively terrifying. So Jessica is walking through this beautiful cemetery, and in her head she says, "For the first time in months, I'm free. Forget the doctors, forget that place. I'm okay now, and we'll start over." And then she does a grave rubbing on this really cool looking old grave.
Creepy whispering.
Creepy whispering. For those who don't know, a grave rubbing is when you take like a special wax paper and you press it up against a grave, and you just rub, and the imprint goes into the wax paper, and then you've got this like kind of replica of it. It was a big deal back in the day, and now, like you said, it's illegal to do.
I knew this artist, I think his name was Armin, who used to do it, and he would like, you know, do the grave rubbing and then put it up, mount it on a, you know, canvas and paint all around it and put sparkles, and he did one of Edith's head. That's cool. Amazing. And yeah, it was like, I should have jumped on that when I had the chance.
Seriously. Jumped on him or jumped on the art?
Both would have been, you know, like it was a little tight. It's like a artist. Let's just go with artist. Amazing artist.
I love it.
Keep talking.
I love it.
You keep talking.
Jessica sees a woman in a white kind of flowy but short dress standing on a hill, and she starts to call out to the others, and then doesn't, and then the woman disappears.
And the little voice says, "Don't say anything. Keep your mouth shut."
Yeah,
don't tell.
She starts to hear these inaudible whispers, and then yes, she tells herself, "Don't tell them, just act normal."
Act normal, which is, I love that. That like sets up the whole movie right there.
Yeah, we're getting this sense that she is struggling with mental health, right? And what I really think this movie does well is does not make her like a bad guy in this movie. She really is struggling, and we see that, and it
hanging on
just barely. She shows her grave rubbing in the car, and her husband says, "What does it say?" And she reads it. "Frail as the leaves that shiver on a spray, like them we flourish, like them decay." And
gorgeous.
He says, "See, you're less frightened already."
What are you gonna put on your tomb? Oh, right. Got any ideas what you're gonna put on your tomb if you had one?
Exactly that.
I mean, that really makes you think.
Yeah, it's a beautiful sentiment. It really is. They get on a ferry that's going to cross the river, and this old vet is like army vet is running it. asks, "What do you got in that case?" referring to what looks like a coffin in the back, right? That they were loading earlier. Duncan says, "It's my mother-in-law." The old vet says, "Wish it were mine." And then Duncan says that they're headed to the old Bishop farmhouse and, they're moving. And the old vet instantly is like unfriendly, right? That smile kind of, yeah, quickly.
Sucks right up his face. And the little furry is very Jaws. It's like you almost use the same kind of thing in the movie Jaws. The little furry with the car on it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's they are driving through. Driving
you know
through.
What I'm about?
I do. I just watched that movie. I just did all the red carpet stuff for The Shark is Broken on Broadway. I ran into Tom Cardahy on the red carpet.
We'll talk about that after. We got to talk about that.
We will.
Do you want to talk about it now or later?
Let's talk about it after. Let's talk about it after. Going. Let's get through this movie.
Yeah, so they're going through town now.
Going through town, and they pull up to the general.
Very quick drive.
They pull up to the general store, and there are these like old, grumpy-looking men judging their hearse. And one of them says, like, look what they're driving. A bunch of hippies. Oh. One of them calls them creeps. And these men have bandages kind of on their bodies, right? Like one of them has them on his inner arms, like where is the opposite of your elbow, or their necks, or their faces. And as they drive past, Duncan calls out and tells them it's cheaper than a station wagon. So we get the impression that they have a little bit of money, or they're saving money, right? But I think they're also driving this hearse because there is something a little weird about them in general. They're like, this is a few years after the hippie movement, after the summer of love. And I feel like this movie reflects what happened next to that generation, right?
Right. This is like the death of the hippie movement.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah.
It's like the next step after, what do they want to do? Like, hey, let's grow some apples. Right. You know what I mean? Like, what are you going to do?
Yeah. Which is what they do.
Farm.
They drive up on this gorgeous 2-story farmhouse. There's a tower in the back, and it's doused in fog, and it is attached to an apple orchard. And Jessica instantly loves this place. She says, "Oh God, it's fantastic." And she runs inside she runs for the door while the men are unloading the hearse. And as she climbs up a set of stairs to lead to the house, she sees someone on the porch behind a post, sitting in a rocking chair.
A hint of someone.
A hint of someone. This movie is very carefully shot. Like you mentioned the cinematography, and it really is memorably staged shots,
Yes.
She looks away, and then the person on this rocking chair is gone.
But the chair's still rocking.
She questions if it's real. It is. She questions if it's real. And then in her head, she says, "Don't tell them. They won't believe you."
Twice. This is the second time she's like, "Shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
Don't tell anybody."
Yeah.
Your mouth shut. Then they get to the door, and the door's a little open, right? Like they go to like open it, and it's open. Creaks open. And they do a great like from the top of the stairs kind of shot, looking down, like, and you get a real feel for this creepy house.
It's super creepy. I love it.
Now your turn.
From that shot at the top of the stairs, we see a pair of legs that kind of run off camera, and Jessica sees it first, and then the others see it, and she's kind of like, "Oh my God, I'm so glad everybody else saw it."
No, the husband actually says, "No, I saw that too. Don't worry, Jess, I saw that."
He assures her. Yeah, he assures her.
Like saying, like letting him know.
Which we kind of learn is kind of become his job.
Yes.
To keep telling her when she's not crazy,
Which is, to me, like, this movie is also like it's such like a sad story of a marriage it's just done. He's done all he could. They've both like kind of like, it's just like a marriage coming to an end. Yeah. And it's so sad. Like you get so sad. I feel his sadness from her. I see her sadness, and I mean, then he does something horrible, but I can see him like trying. I mean, he sells, gives up everything to move to this, fruit farm to try to, help her. And it's, go ahead on, jumping ahead.
No, it's so
So they go upstairs and they're all, and
she seems excited that there's somebody upstairs.
right.
She's like excited by this. Her as an actress, her instincts are oftentimes opposite what you might expect. This movie is opposite what you might expect. If this movie were made now, I think that they would over explain everything. We would have the scene where
Everything.
Jessica goes to the local library and looks up the history of the house, and
Mm.
it's like that shit never happens here.
And the finger goes like every line, like with the name and dates, and just kills the mystery.
Yes, exactly. So they get upstairs. I love the shot down the hallway where she's walking toward the camera and she's in darkness,
Yes.
and then she steps forward and she's in light, and then in darkness, and then in light. It's really good.
And it's such a great jump scare coming
When she goes around the spooky corner.
that I every time I see it, I still kind of scream a little bit.
Yeah, she goes around that spooky corner to a staircase that leads up to what is presumably that tower, which is the attic, and it takes its time. And then
Attic.
yes, it is a very effective, well-earned jump scare where this redheaded woman emerges and frightens Jessica and tries to run away, but Duncan grabs her. And this woman is, I'm sorry, I think it's Woody who grabs her. This woman is gorgeous. She's got this great red hair and she's got these very intense blue eyes. So we learn that she's just kind of like, she's a hippie. She doesn't have a home. She thought this house was abandoned. And so she had moved in. And then when she saw the hearse coming up the drive, she ran and hid. And Jessica remarks, you must have scared us as much as we must have scared you as much as you scared us. And the woman says, well, I'll go get my things. The men go to unpack. We find that her name is Emily, and Jessica follows her. And we learn that Emily doesn't have a place to go. Jess invites her to stay and have dinner and spend the night. She insists. And then
the night.
Just
the night.
One, singular. And then they'll drive her to town in the morning. The men are carrying this massive case that looks like a coffin into the house, and they set it down. And then we cut to the kitchen table where everybody's having dinner. And we learn a little bit more about Emily. You know, don't you live somewhere? Well, sure, but I haven't been there in a long time. I'm not sure I really want to go back yet. She says she went to school, but she dropped out and doesn't really think that she wants to go back. Like, why would I go back to school? And then she starts strumming on her guitar and starts singing this really pretty song. I found this on YouTube also. A lot of people cover this song from this movie. It's called Stay Forever, My Love.
Really?
Yeah, there's some really pretty versions of it. While she's singing and playing guitar, Duncan goes and gets his giant stand-up bass from the coffin case.
Gorgeous.
So that's what it's gorgeous. And he brings it to the kitchen and starts playing with her. And as he adds it becomes ominous sounding when the bass jumps in.
I don't really remember this scene so much. So
got it. I'll keep going.
I just know they kind of play. And is this when she starts like kind of like, they like each other?
That's exactly it. In her head,
like she
Jessica
sort of notices
thinks
the flirtation going on.
Yeah, she thinks he likes her, and she's got this smile on her face. She's very good at smiling through things.
Yes, the smile.
Yeah. She begins to clear the plates. She gets uncomfortable, and she gets to starts clearing the plates, and it's raw meat on these plates, and it's there's blood under this raw meat.
Blood on the pooling.
Yeah, and she said in her head, we hear it's blood, Jessica. It's blood. Blood. And we learned that Duncan was in the Philharmonic in New York, and he's now moved here to be a farmer. He's going to raise apples and have a garden. And Woody says he's a nut, and Jessica says I'm the nut. We're having coffee in the living room. It invites everybody in, and it's
they'll have a nice little giggle.
It's a little uncomfortable. Everyone no one talks about Jessica's health or state of being, but she feel like she makes that little crack, and everyone's like.
But it's hovering over everything.
Yes, at all times. We get to the living room and they're having coffee. They're sitting in a circle on the floor. We found out Emily's never been to New York. She's been here for ages. Jess asks, have you ever been lonely? Like, do you get lonely? And
Uh,
I actually wrote this line down because I think it's really lovely. Emily says, oh, sure, but sometimes it's not lonely. Sometimes I hear things. And she looks directly at Jessica when she says that. Like when I'm alone, it's very quiet. Like now, you can let your imagination go and listen to the stillness, and it gets dark and the shadows come to life. Have you ever had anything like that happen to you? And she's looking at Jess when she says this. And Jess reveals that she was once running late to one of her husband's concerts. She must have been exhausted. She overslept, and her father had just passed away. And when she woke up, she could see her father and he was calling for her. It's the only hint that we get about what might have set her off into her mental breakdown, I think, is perhaps the death of her father.
which I like that. That's like another mystery. Like we don't need to know why she went nuts. So like the
Nope.
whole backstory, which would have been a whole prologue thing if they made it today. It would have been like a whole setup thing of why she
Yes.
went nuts. And instead they just kind of like, she's out. If they talk about it, she's out. Go.
Yeah, completely. Emily suggests, let's have a seance. And Duncan shakes his head and she says, don't you believe in spirits? And he shakes his head again and she says, well, nothing's ever completely dead, which I think is a really cool line.
Oh, that was one of the only so that when John Hancock was making this movie, that was one of the only stipulations. They were like, we need a couple. They wanted a horror movie, and they're like, we wanted a seance and somebody in white clothes floating around, like a woman in white. That was all they wanted, and they got it.
And they got
the
it.
seance moment, and then Jessica makes the big mistake. Anybody who ever died in this house. I mean, like, you're asking for trouble, Jess.
Truly, you're inviting anybody in. Yeah, she says, if you're present, give us a sign, come to us. And so Emily starts it, and then she tells Jessica to do it, and Jessica does. And she had this as a performance, just this earnestness on her face. She wants it. I think she wants something to happen. She wants to believe in something. And tears almost forming it. This woman was a stage actor primarily. And I think that's perhaps part of why we get such a strong but like subtle performance from her,
which is hard for stage actors to give a subtle performance on film.
Yeah. So she begins to hear whispering, and she begins to hear, I'm here, Jessica, I'm here, come to us.
It's like, is it different voices? And they kind of show like different parts of that, like very The Haunting, where they're showing like all the molding in the house and kind of like different paintings and stuff, and a little tour of like the old wallpaper.
Yep. We even at a point hear a man say, a toast to my bride, Abigail, and to the bishops, Abigail, my bride. And then we hear a woman moaning, and then we settle in on the clock chiming. And Jess, with tears in her eyes, she says, oh, it's so sad. And Woody says, yeah, it's sad. We gave a seance and nobody came. And so in this moment, we get this hint that she heard all of this and nobody else did.
Right.
But did she really hear it, or is it in her head? And that's what this movie is going to be the entire time is this happening? Can she see this? Is it in her head?
An unreliable narrator.
Which I love. That's how I feel about me running my own life. So Jessica and her husband Duncan go to bed. They kiss on their way up the stairs. The seance really got under her skin. But when they kiss, Duncan pulls back the slightest bit at the end of it. It's really subtle. It's there. And they get up to their room.
Just enough if you're in a relationship to know.
Yeah. And you know what?
A bad sign.
When you know when it happens, whether you tell yourself or not, whether you admit it or not. Jessica regales the grave rubbing from that day. She reads what was on it, and it said, sacred to the memory of Venture Smith, an African. Though the son of a king, he was kidnapped and sold as a slave. But by his industry, he acquired money to purchase his freedom. And then she says to Duncan, that's our motto. That's like us. And I'm sitting here thinking, that's nothing like you fucking privileged bitch.
It's all about the horrors of starting over.
Yeah. I mean, I can see where she's turning this awful thing that happened to this poor man into, but come on.
I mean, it was 50 years ago, it was a different time. The fact that she took the black guy's rubbing was probably a big step back then. I mean, today it would you see it in a different lens. But back then it was like, you're rooting for her.
Yeah, for sure. She hangs the rubbings on the walls. She's looking at Duncan saying, "Aren't they beautiful?" And anyway, who's left to remember them? And Duncan is I think he's weirded out. Like he gets it, and I think he gets her, but he's like, "You are surrounding this room with death already," you know. And she comments on the angels' faces that were on these graves that are now rubbed into the rubbing, and she describes them as merciless.
And they're all surrounding them. It's like so well done the way they just hang there.
Yeah, almost like watching them. I mean, there are moments in the
Yes.
film where the wind like kind of blows through and they just move.
And just a little bit,
Yeah.
just a little bit. It's so good.
Kind of flap in the breeze. It's real good. So Woody and Emily are left downstairs, and there's a little bit of a flirt going on, and they can hear Jessica and
The
Duncan.
hippies, and it's the 60s, just after the 60s of Free Nation, and you would think it's an easy go for both of them. They're both attractive. They're both super doable. They look good together.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it just makes sense because they're both single, and they're like, there's nothing else to do. No TV in this house.
No, definitely no
Keep
TV. So he goes in for a kiss, but Emily pulls away and tells him it's been a long time and I don't know you yet. Then she says, "Take me for a walk." So they're walking by the lake. It's nighttime. I think this is one of the day for night shots that works really well.
Yes.
And Emily comments, "Your friend Jessica seems unhappy." And Woody says, "No, she was away for 6 months and she just got back a couple weeks ago and she's better now." We learn that Jessica and Duncan moved to the country for peace and for a change, and they're going to farm. And Woody will stick around for a while. He's going to help them get settled, and then he'll probably move on. And he says, "We're all kind of wandering spirits." And she says, "I guess so." And they kiss.
Do they?
They do, yeah, at the lake. And then she tells him, "Don't be in such a hurry. Don't worry. I won't go away." We cut to the next day and they're bathing in the lake. They have like soap and everything. They're literally taking a bath in this murky water. I will not swim in a lake. I cannot do it. I cannot get in water that I can't see anything in.
Bottoms of lakes are so disgusting. When your feet touch the bottom, it's just like the slimy.
Yes.
So like you don't want your feet to touch the bottom.
I will swim in the ocean and have a great time. I get too brave in the ocean, actually. Like I go out a little too far, but lakes, really? I won't do it. I can't do it. Still water freaks me the fuck out. I don't know what's in there.
Bacteria now.
Yeah.
Eating.
So they are bathing. Woody is scrubbing Jessica, and it is not uncomfortable. I mean, they're hippies, free love, but it's not too intimate.
But not when the husband starts doing Emily.
It gets to be too much. Yeah. It's a little too much intention on her shoulders, you know?
Yes.
And Jessica sees this and smiles through it and turns around and she says, just trying to be like, she said, "Okay, I'm finished," and walks away, you know, and gets out and
hanging out on the dock, having a nice time.
Emily
jumps up and go make lunch or something.
Emily is gonna go make she's gonna go make dinner and she's gonna pack, and Jessica goes for a swim by herself out in the lake. The others are, like you said, hanging out on the dock.
She's like, "Who wants to go swimming?" And they're like, "No." They're like, "We'll watch." And they just both lay back and nobody gives her any mind. Again, enthusiastically, I can't even say that word. Enthusiastically. Help me with this word. Enthusiastic. Why can't I say this word?
Enthusiastically.
Oh, perfect. Nicely done. As she jumped out of the limo, as she jumped out of the hearse, she jumps into the water. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, that's great. No, that's great. That's a great observation. Like the things that she's really excited about doing, they don't want to do it with her. I hadn't even thought of that. So she's
and they never pan out.
No, they don't. Because as she's swimming, she starts hearing the whispers, a woman saying, "Jessica, come to me, come to me." And under the water, we see red hair on like a corpse with a white dress, and only under the water. And she freaks the fuck out and starts.
And it's just super. It's and what it actually is so like this like prop thing that they figured out in the pool the night before, like had a like just like this like mannequin-y thing, and it's so good, so creepy, so good under the water, so you can't really see it, and It looks incredible.
Yeah, it's incredible. And you're right. They were at the pool at the hotel the night before and they were just playing around in the swimming pool and then figured out how they were going to do it the next day. And it fucking worked. For those who know this movie, this and the lake scene later are really iconic moments. It's kind of burned in the brain of everybody
I think so.
who knows and loves this movie.
I know this girl that I'm always trying to, that she's seen this movie. Okay. She talks about this scene. She saw it once when she was a kid. This girlfriend of mine I was always trying to get her to rewatch it. She won't rewatch it because the movie freaked her out. It's one of like the top 3 movies that ever ruined her, and it's this scene that did it. That she was like, there's something in the water, and she's not a swimmer.
It's that thing about not being able to see what's in the water, you know? It's why I won't get in a lake.
Yes.
So the men come in and they pull her out, and Jessica is freaking the fuck out. She says, something's in the water, it touched me, and she describes it as something like a shark. And Woody jumps right into the water to show her that there's nothing there, kind of like how a parent would do that, like to how you would talk to a child. Like you might open the closet door and turn on the light and be like, see, there's nothing there.
Big splashing.
Yeah. Now we see the girl in the white dress that we saw in the cemetery before, and she's watching from the woods. And then we cut to dinner at the kitchen table, and they're eating.
She exists.
She exists. They're eating what looks like raw ground beef. So every time that we see them eating, it's raw meat.
Ugh.
Is this in her head? Like, is that, you know what I mean? No, you don't know what I mean because no one knows the answer to that question.
Or is she a shitty cook?
And in Jessica's head, she looks at Duncan, and in her head, she says, now he thinks I'm getting sick again, but I'm not. And Emily looks at her, and without moving her lips, we hear Emily whisper, liar. So they decide to look for things around the house to sell for money, to put food on the table. And so we're getting more of an idea that they are broke.
And they're going to sell whatever they can.
Exactly.
So they're combing through the house.
And it's full of antiques. Jessica goes up that spooky staircase to the attic, and she walks in, and it's a really interesting shot. I don't know if you noticed that. There's a bird cage hanging from the ceiling, and when she gets to the top of the stairs, she steps behind the bird cage, and it's just for like 2 seconds, and it looks like she is in this bird cage.
Caged.
And then she walks out. It's subtle, right?
And that attic's filled with shit. Cool shit.
Really cool shit. Now, while she's doing this, Duncan finds this giant tractor in a shed with a giant pesticide sprayer attached to it, and that'll come in play later. Jess opens a chest that she finds, and laying on top of a white old-timey wedding dress is like a knife, and like it doesn't look rusted, it doesn't look old, it's like a good-looking knife. And she sets it on the windowsill, and then she puts this wedding dress on over her clothes and puts on this elaborate black necklace and just kind of starts like prancing around,
having a moment.
Yeah. And then on the wall, she sees this elaborate round silver picture frame. Will you explain what this picture frame looks like? Because I don't understand why it looks the way that it looks.
It just looks like, it looks almost black. It's like curly, like weird, like it's not an attractive frame. It looks super heavy. It's kind of a weird, I don't know. It looks evil. It looks a little evil.
Yeah.
And it's got a picture in it of a whole wedding party. Is that about right? With another redhead. Could it be the same one?
It's a weird picture. 3 people, a man in the center sitting down, and then on either side of him is a woman. And one woman's a little bit older looking at the camera. And then on his left is our right is a woman who is Emily. Like, we know this is Emily. And she's looking away from the camera. That's a sepia tone, but if we could see in color, that would be red hair.
I didn't know that. I got the other one was a woman. And so the other one could have been like, like a Jessica stand-in in a way.
Sure.
Some other woman she drove nuts.
That's a fair point because she doesn't look happy.
No.
They start loading some stuff into the back of the hearse, and Jessica wants to keep the picture, but Duncan tells her to put it in. And Emily says, you're going to sell this, referring to the frame. She says, but they're people. They have a history. You can't just sell them like an old car, but they're going to do it anyway. So Emily has packed up her stuff, and she's going to get a ride back into town and part ways. And Woody has this little like tender, sad moment where he tells Emily, "I thought you said you wouldn't go away." And Emily says, "Did you believe me?" And Woody says, "Yes, yes, I did." It's cute and silly.
It is kind of cute, and it's kind of like it's because poor Woody, like this is his last chance for some tail. Is about to leave the movie. He's gonna be stuck with Jessica. There's nothing, He seems like a randy guy. You know what I mean? Like a full-blooded guy.
I mean, he's young,
Woody.
he's virile, he's
Woody.
attractive. Woody is his name.
Very virile.
There are only 3 women in this movie. Even when we get, well, I'll point this detail out in a minute, but there are only 3 women in this whole movie. The rest of it is men by design, I think.
I think you're right.
So Jessica is sitting in the car with Duncan and turns to him and she has a smile on her face and she says, "Why don't we ask her to stay? Like, why don't we just have her stay with us?" And Duncan, he wastes no time and jumps out of that car and invites Emily to stay. And she's very excited. And Jessica says, "We're glad to have you." And then we hear Emily whisper, "I won't go away, Jessica. I'll never go away," which is what Emily had told Woody that she wouldn't go away, right?
And she's not going away. They're stuck with her.
She's not going anywhere. On the way to town to sell these antiques, Jessica asks Duncan if he finds Emily attractive, and he admits it and says, yeah. And then they stop at the general store from before, and Jessica, they part ways. Jessica follows a sign that says fresh eggs, and she goes into this noisy, overcrowded chicken coop. And did you notice this? All the chickens are roosters.
Something about it is very Texas Chainsaw because it's so like loud, the chickens, and it's so like otherworldly, and it's just like like what do you, and the guy's so creepy with her, and she's got that big smile on her face, like eggs. Like, she just wants some eggs.
Yeah, it's it's so unsettling, and I think it's because in our minds we don't notice that it's all men, like male chickens, right?
I didn't notice that. That's great.
With these, and then but I think you do recognize that something's off if she's buying eggs, but we're only looking at like 50 male rooster chickens all over the place,
Loud squawking. And then the other side.
On the other side,
tell them what else is going on.
Duncan is looking to sell. He asked somebody in the general store, "Where can I go, like, find a place to sell antiques?" And this old man tells him, "If there was a place, I sure wouldn't tell you."
Bunch of assholes.
So shitty. These people are so shitty to them.
It's like not being neighborly.
And the man who says that, he's got bandages on his inner arms. And so Jessica, she gets startled by the chickens. They kind of scream at her. And here's something, I don't know if this is intentional or not, but she's holding this carton of eggs in a very weird way that you would not hold a carton of eggs. And in the back of my mind, I keep waiting for her to drop these eggs. And I don't think it's intentional, but just this thought of me afraid that she's going to shatter these eggs adds to the tension of what's happening. And I don't know why. But like you said, it's a weird, it's an off-putting scene.
Yes. And then, so everybody goes back out there, and there's like a group of older guys hanging out by the hearse. And one of them's using his heel to scrape off the love. And they kind of rough him up a little bit, the husband. Like they're a little bullyish to him, right?
Yeah, they bop the back of his head as he's getting into the car, and he says, "Watch it." And then Jessica notices, and she's still holding the eggs in a weird fucking way. And she notices that, yeah, he scraped the word love off of the door of the car. And they're not getting out of her way. We get these
some fucking eggs right at their head.
Honestly, she just shatter those eggs on their faces. We get these weird close-up shots of them, like the camera's way too close to their faces as they're staring at her. And then she gets in and they drive away, and Jessica asks, why are they all bandaged, like talking about the bandages that are all on these guys' bodies. And she even noticed that the chicken farmer had one too on his neck. So they find an antique store, and they discover that the owner used to live in New York. His name is Sam Dunker. He had an antique shop in New York. They used to live by it. They have, New Yorkers do that whole, I know that street corner, as though, that means something. Something we all do. Jess mentions that they tore their building down, and then Duncan cuts her off. And it's this little like throwaway moment that I'm have to wonder if that was part of their decision to leave as well, right? Now, and if you think about it also, it means that their home was destroyed in New York. They have no home left. They have nothing left there, right? So let's go try something new.
But he's also always cutting her off in mixed company.
Yes.
Like when they're like definitely with the townspeople, he's always trying to shut her down a little bit. I'm like, oh, no, like don't.
Very much with this man as well. They show the guy's trying to sell them antiques. Duncan says, "No, we're not interested. We're trying to sell." And Jessica sees
he goes up
this.
in a schmear though for a while. He's like, "Oh, I got this great lamp. I got this other thing. Ah, come on, let me show you this." And he's running around like so excited. And they're looking at each other like, "Oh, how do we tell him?" They're looking to sell, not buy.
Speaking of that lamp, Jessica mentions that it's so beautiful, and he says it is a Malfiore lamp, Italian for flowers of evil. And Jessica, in her head, we hear whispers, "Flowers of evil. How could anything this pretty be evil? It's just old. That's all." And then as she's looking around, we hear her think, when we have money again, this is the kind of stuff we're going to buy for the house. So, like, all right, they lost their home in New York. They have no money. This might have been their only option, is to buy this dirt cheap
fruit farm.
Fruit farm, which would not be affordable by today's standards. I feel like in 1971, you could get a piece of property like that for dirt cheap.
God, you totally could way back when. It's the big problem today.
They are selling all of this stuff, the antiques that they found, and Mr. Dunker, the antique dealer, remarks that the silver name is, it's a very nice piece, and he recognizes the people in the picture. It's the Bishops. Did the owner tell you any stories about Abigail Bishop drowning in 1880? It's quite a story. And then he lowballs them on their prices, on the pieces. He tells them it's because he feels funny buying these. He doesn't think that the locals would like it if he were selling the Bishop's stuff. And he just wants to keep the frame again, and Duncan shuts her down. And the antiques dealer, Mr. Dunker, continues and says the story about the Bishops is extraordinary. Abigail never got to wear that wedding dress. And Jess is interested, and Duncan interrupts.
And she's like, "Oh no, just give him another minute."
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
No. She's like, she does this great thing. She's like,
yeah,
and she's really interested, and Duncan's like, "No."
And then the antiques dealer says,
set her off.
Exactly. She drowned in the cove behind her house, your house. They never found her body. The legend is she's still alive. And some say she's a vampire who roams the countryside. And that's when Duncan interrupts him and said he asked for the money. Like, he doesn't think that Jessica can handle this story.
Nope.
And in the car, Jessica remarks to Duncan, she says, "That was rude. Don't do that again when you cut him off. And, you're making me sick that you're worrying about me this much."
Which I like that. She's setting boundaries.
Yep.
This is like the first, like, kind of like boundary. She's like, please don't. I don't think she says please. Does she?
I don't think so. I think she says, "Don't do that again. That was rude." Yeah. We see Mr. Dunker get his fishing pole and his tackle box.
And he's off to go fishing. And then there's a whole kind of scene of him in a boat, a little. I wonder if it's the same boat at the end. A little rowboat.
I don't think it's not. I looked.
Jessica ends up in.
It's not. I actually tried to make sure. Yeah, it's not. Woody drives his tractor out of the shed. He's taken upon himself to spray this orchard with pesticides, and Emily is strumming her guitar on the porch. And Jess and Duncan are waving at Woody, and she just says, "Oh gosh, it's so beautiful. Can we really stay?" I think this moment's really interesting because she's watching Woody spray pesticides. He's spraying death all over this orchard, right? And she remarks that it's beautiful. Can we stay here? Then she begins to pick an apple, and Duncan stops her and he says, "Hey, don't touch that. It's poison." So two things come to my mind when I'm watching this movie. One, a poisoned apple from Snow White. B, the Garden of Eden. And she's reaching for this apple, aka knowledge. And her husband says, "Don't touch that. It's poison." Like, he is keeping her from growing as a person. Like,
or dying. Because she's about to gobble it up. She's so
or
dumb.
Dying. But I think that she has this kind of comfortable feel about death. Like, she surrounds herself with these grave rubbings, and she's got this kind of morbid obsession.
Like, you can tell, like, almost she's gonna be better off dead.
At least I think she feels that way. you know, like I get the sense that she would be comfortable if she died. I don't think she
Right.
would take her life, but I don't think she would mind if she died.
Correct. Agreed. So then what happens?
So Jessica and Duncan are going to the cemetery to do more rubbings. And I guess we kind of realize now that there's a cemetery kind of within walking distance to their house. And Duncan finds a mole next to a grave and picks it up. And as it turns out, the mole that they had purchased for use in this film died before its scene came up. And the only animal that they could find was a field mouse. So this mole is played by a mouse, which I think actually works in the movie's favor because he's holding a mouse and he's telling her it's a mole. And if we are going with this idea that he may be gaslighting or he may be manipulating her and she's believing it, it's an accident because they had a real mole, you know. It's just, but I think it adds to it, you know.
Totally. I don't even know if I know what a mole looks like, to tell you the truth. So I just assumed it was a mole. Because he's like, don't touch it, don't touch it. And she's like, oh, can we keep it? Can we keep it? Oh, she's very excited for the mole.
Super excited. And he goes back to the house to put it in a box, and she's overly excited to keep this poor creature, you know, like that's not gonna live. You put it, whatever. All right, so now we do cut to, like you mentioned, Mr. Dunker fishing on his rowboat and the red-headed body under the lake. We see that kind of by the boat, and then we cut away and we don't see any more. The music gets really fucking good right now. And Jessica finds Abigail Bishop's grave, which I think is interesting because they remarked that they never found her body in the lake, and yet she has a grave. And she sees the woman in white that keeps disappearing on the hill above the cemetery, and she's beckoning for her. Jessica follows her through the woods. She starts to hear water gushing, and she follows the sound to a waterfall. And at the bottom of the waterfall, she sees Mr. Dunker, and he's bloody and he's dead. And this is another really effective jump scare.
I agree. It's getting a little bit big old throat injury there.
Yeah, which is going to become a common theme. She screams, loses it, runs away, and then she brings Duncan, her husband, back to the scene, and Mr. Dunker is gone, and she's upset, and her husband does not believe her about any of this. And pardon me.
Then they see the little girl in white.
Yes, and
so
Duncan sees her this time. So the girl is real, and they chase after her. They chase through the apple orchard, and Duncan catches her. And Jessica's saying, like, why are you following me? Were you leading me to that body? And we discover that this girl can't talk. She's mute.
And she's got a bandage too, doesn't she? She's got a little bandage going on too.
Does she? It would make sense.
Well, she's got a scarf around her neck, like she's covering something.
I'll buy that. Yeah, for sure.
I feel like there was something going on with that. And I feel like Emily kind of shut her up. Like, they don't really say that, but I feel like that's kind of the implied. Because she's trying to warn.
Oh, you think that she doesn't speak because of Emily?
Yeah, like Emily did something to her, so she can't speak. Because she's not like doing anything with sign language or anything. She's like, like she's making like somebody who recently couldn't talk. I don't know. Maybe they didn't have sign language back then, did they? 1971?
They did.
What do you think?
They did, yeah.
Okay, good.
They did. I think that's a brilliant point, because Woody rolls up on the tractor and says what's going on, and then Emily walks in and she's holding one of the apples and kind of tossing it in her hand. And when the little girl sees, she's not a little girl, she's probably about 20, but when she sees Emily, she runs away terrified.
Busted. Is that the last we see of her?
It is not the last we see later. Of her. Oh, yeah, we don't see her again until the end.
I feel like she was very like underused. Like there was the more like because you kind of think she's the monster at first. Like at first, like because she seems sort of ghostly. Like when you see her in the cemetery in the beginning, you kind of think she's like the ghost. She seems like a ghost. She's very ghosty. She's giving ghost vibes, and she's very an unexplained character.
If there's anything in this movie that I wish were a little better explained or elaborated on, I think it would be her. I think when I first saw this movie, I was confusing her with Emily because Emily also appears in white throughout, the movie as well. But I love your concept that that Emily made her mute or took her voice away in some way. And yeah, there is a scarf around her neck, so she may have just taken her fucking, larynx or something.
And I feel like I've seen it so many times. I feel like I saw the bandage the last time. Like
Okay.
I was like, oh, she's fucked up too. Like the guys in town.
Yeah.
But unlike the guys in town, well, I feel like Emily gets rid of the women, but she'll let some of the guy like the guy. Am I jumping ahead too much? Keep going.
No, I mean, I
Sorry.
think that's a great point. Yeah, let's get to that. Let's get to that. So, we're at the kitchen table.
Okay.
Emily's telling some really dumb story about a killer cake in Scotland, and Jess notices that she grabs Duncan's arm, and it's with intention, right? And we hear her whisper, "He wants her. He'll never believe me again. No one will. Did it happen? Did it happen?"
God.
And then in her head, she pictures the girl and the antiques dealer's body, and then the body floating in the water. And we hear, "Come, Jessica. Come with me, Jessica. Come." And then we hear Emily whisper, "He's mine now. You think he loves you? He's mine now." And Jessica feigns laughter at the end of Emily's story. And she says she's tired. And she says goodnight. And then she says goodnight to the mole. And it's really uncomfortable. They've put the mole in like a weird
There's
little
a mole murder about to happen.
a mole murder. They put it in like a fishbowl with a lid on it and some newspaper, and we don't see the mole again. Yeah, well, until it's too late. The mole is off camera. Woody,
the knife scene. Was there like a knife thing happening?
Yeah, but that's coming. Not yet.
Okay.
Cat.
Carry on.
So Woody stands and he says to Duncan. So he says to Emily first, "Good night." And there's a little bit of like a, "Do you want to come with me?" And she says good night and kind of dismisses him. And it's clear like she's not going to come with him. And Woody stands up and he says to Duncan, "Take care of your wife there." And like he can see what's going on. It's a great moment, right?
Yeah. Because it's like Woody sees it now.
Yeah. And so, he says goodnight and leaves. And then there's a moment Duncan and Emily look at each other, and then he says goodnight and leaves Emily alone.
Reluctantly.
He's
like, yeah. He doesn't want to leave,
but he has to.
Because he's busted, kind of.
And exactly.
How would you choose Duncan over Woody? I just got to say that. How do you choose Duncan over Woody?
Man, I don't know. Come on. Well, because I think we'll get into it, but I think that she had
a bigger game plan going.
Emily wants Jessica ultimately, and so she has to tear her down and destroy everything around her. So Jessica and Duncan are in bed, and she's kind of trying to be sweet, talking about sugar maples, and he just out of nowhere says, maybe you should go back to New York for a while. You should see your doctor.
Heart-wrenching.
Yeah.
Heart-wrenching.
She tears up.
You just see the pain on her face, and she's so like, destroyed.
Yeah.
I mean, I really felt, you really feel for her there, because she's giving it her all.
And she has tears in her eyes, but she's still
smiling. She's doing a smiling thing.
Tears in her eyes, and she's smiling through it. Right. Yeah. And she says, "Where will we get the money?" And he says, "We'll find it." And then he says, "I just can't take it anymore, Jess." And she says, "Why don't you leave me then?" And there are tears streaming, and he turns to face her and he tries to touch her. And she starts having a fit. And this is the most upset that we see her in the whole movie, and she has a very specific pattern of speech. "You think I'm hopeless? Leave me." Like, it's very, inhuman, or just the complete opposite of how she's behaved the rest of the movie. And you can kind of see,
it sounds like she's going crazy.
Yeah, you can kind of see that, this is what she might have been like while she was in the hospital.
Mm-hmm. It's coming back. And it's just heartbreaking.
She calms down. He rolls over, and she goes to touch him, and then she doesn't. She starts to get out of bed, and then, maybe it'd be better if we sleep apart tonight. And Duncan says, "Don't go. I will go. I'm not sleepy anyway." So she lays down, feels defeated, and now we cut to the mole in the fishbowl, and the lid gets taken off, and that same knife from the attic is like put into the bowl, and we don't see it, but we just see the knife go up and down just slightly, and little bits of blood on the end of the blade.
And it's a mouse. And that was did you read this whole thing where it was like the actress who was supposed to do it had this whole breakdown scene because she did not want to kill the mole. turned out to be a mouse, but she was like, she didn't want to have anything to do with that. And they had to kind of talk her back into the room to do it. Like she ran out into the car, locked herself. She was like, I don't want to kill a mouse. I don't want to, I don't know if that's my character. Cat in the background is so cool.
He's such a fucking annoying cat. I love him so much. I did read that, and then the filmmakers are really murky about the dead mouse that she holds later, and they don't. How did this mouse?
They got
die?
a dead mouse in their
and,
hand.
I've really hoped that they
nobody's talking.
Yeah, we all know what happened to that poor thing.
How else do you get a dead mouse on cue?
Yeah, on cue.
You gotta.
All right, so Duncan's asleep in his chair and downstairs, and Emily approaches wearing a white nightgown or the white wedding dress. I couldn't tell, but she sits on the arm of the chair, and Duncan wakes up and he starts touching her face and then her hair and then down her arm, and she unbuttons her nightgown, and then they start kissing, and the music's spooky, and then they kiss passionately, and then she kind of like slinks down into his lap, and then we fade to the lake at sunrise. And Jess starts shrieking, no, no, no. And she's holding this dead mole covered in blood. Mouse. She explains that she thinks that the same creature or whatever it is that killed the antique dealer killed the mole. I know everyone thinks that I did it, but I swear I didn't. Everyone's just looking at her like she's nuts. And she runs upstairs. Looks out the window, and Woody gets on his tractor, and then we hear Emily giggling, and Duncan gets into the hearse, and the view is from upstairs, right? Jessica looking downstairs at the top of the hearse, and so we can't see in the car, and we see Emily lean in toward the driver's side window, and is it a kiss? Is it whispering or saying something close to his face? We don't know.
It's inappropriate.
It's inappropriate.
Whatever it is.
Yes. So Jessica,
just her ass sticking out.
And she smiles after she does it too. So Jessica goes up to the attic, and we see the silver frame is hanging there again in the attic, the one that they sold. And we hear whispers, I'm alive, I'm here, I'm still here. And then we hear also when the antique dealer said Abigail never got to wear that wedding dress, and Emily comes up from behind her, startles her, and starts approaching her with like this intense look in her eyes, right? Almost like
it's a little lesbian-y, right? This is like the lesbian moment, I would think, right? Like, because it feels like these were two guys. This would be like a
yeah. I've seen that porn. So Duncan pulls into the general store. Duncan pulls up to the general store. He gets out of his car and goes inside, and the old men follow him in. And then we cut back to Jess and Emily. And Jessica remarks that the woman in the picture looks so much like her. And Emily's kind of being like dismissive, like, oh, I guess, yeah, it does. How weird. Well, it's an old picture. It could be anybody. And Jessica's no, like it's in the eyes.
It looks just like you. Like it really does. No. She's just like, she's got her hand on her chin and she's like nodding. No, she's like, no, looks just like you. Like trying to be cash. Or the other one's kind of creeping up on us some more.
Super uncomfortable, and Emily starts stroking her face, and she says, I'm so sorry you're upset. And Jessica is so uncomfortable, and then we hear Emily whispering, crawling. Jessica, come home. Jessica, my eyes, look into my eyes and come with me. And so Emily suggests, let's just go for a swim. You need some air. And Jessica says, I don't want to get in the water. I want to stay away from the cove. The water is frightening. The water scares me. And Emily says, sure, you don't have to swim, just kind of slide under the water and then we'll get some sun. So they walk to the lake together, and we hear whispers, follow me, Jessica, follow me. And they get to the lake, and Emily starts putting sunscreen, like lotion, on Jess's back, and it gets really intimate, right? She starts kind of pulling the straps of her bathing suit down.
And she's not enjoying it. Jess is not enjoying it. She's like, that's enough. No, that's good. No, that's okay. No, thank you. No, that's good. No, okay, thanks. It is stop.
It's exactly what she does. And then Emily starts kind of touching her face too, and she does exactly what you just did. It's like, okay, that's good. And
then she does that fucked up thing that nobody wants you to do when you're standing next to a body of water, and fucking pushes her in.
It's so fucked up. And then she jumps in after her and starts dunking her under the water. And Jessica again is like, get away from me. That's enough. I've had enough. Like she's not
Not
aggressive.
having it, not enjoying it at all, not being super pushy back about it though. Like her boundaries are like not. She's not mean. She's never like stop it. She's always trying to be super polite and nice, and it's not working for her.
Which is also for me a little bit of the lesbian undertones, in that I think that she like she does have an attraction to Emily somewhere in there.
Listening.
And she's so repressed and she's so pushed away and pushed aside, and she's not allowing herself to feel these things, right? She's not struggling or trying to get away super fast.
No, but she's trying.
And so
Let me
she
ask you
does
something about the husband.
yeah.
So when he goes into the store and the guys follow him into it, is it because he's now one of them?
I think that not yet. I think that happens shortly after that, because before he left, he told Emily, I'll be back before lunch. He was going to go look for a telephone. And then we don't see him again for a long, long time. So back at the lake, Jessica does get away from Emily and then looks around and Emily's gone. And then she starts to see that floating body under the water again. And it gets very still. And we hear the whispering, come to me, Jessica, come to me this way, follow me here, Jessica, here. And then a white arm reaches up and pulls her under, and Jessica shrieks and she runs out of the water this time. Like she was not running from Emily, but she's running from this. And then from under the water, Emily begins to rise, and she's wearing the white wedding dress from the picture, and it's fucking scary, dude.
She's like corpse white. The hair is like wet red hair hanging out like almost like Carrie kind of.
Yeah.
And like kind of creeping up on her, and it's so
yeah.
Super slow, super like not a rush, like the exact opposite of the voyage of the Damakamaca. Like where instead of zooming in on her, like she's just doing a slow creep. Very effective.
Yes, it takes its time. She takes her time getting out. We hear whispering, stay, Jessica, stay. And she slowly emerges from the water, and we hear, you're home now. You're home. And Emily goes, so we're face to face now, right? Emily and Jessica become face to face, and Emily goes in for her neck, and you can't tell if it's to bite it or for a kiss. It's very ambiguous, just like this whole fucking movie. Emily grabs Jessica by the wrist, but she gets away and she's running back home, locks herself into her bedroom.
It's a great run. It's like a shrieking barefoot over like like flailing wet bathing suit.
Yep. Yep. And it goes on and on. She runs past some tire tractors. Yeah. Back to the house, tries to lock her bedroom door, and it won't lock. And I have to wonder, did Duncan remove the locks from the bedroom door?
Was there a lock originally?
I don't know, but it won't lock. It is the whole thing. So she takes the dresser, which has a mirror. So the door has a mirror on the back of it. The dresser that she shoves in front of it has a mirror on it as well. And she sits down on the bed and she starts looking at her grave rubbings. And wet, exactly.
Something about being in a wet bathing suit sitting on your bed is the grossest thing in the world to me.
Yeah.
Like, don't sit on your bed in a wet bathing suit. That would drive me nuts right there.
And maybe that's also adding to the paranoia and dread feeling of this movie, right? So we see the clock and 2 hours have passed, and she's just been like looking at the grave rubbings on the wall. They're kind of swaying and flapping in the wind just a little bit.
A weird the time like that, that like when you lock yourself in a room, and I feel like people do that all the time, especially during COVID and all the time, when you're just in a room by yourself and time is passing, you hear the ticking of the clock and it's just moving, and like the room is taking on a character of its own, like the grave rubbings are starting to flutter a little bit, like where's that wind coming from? Super creepy.
Super creepy. She starts thinking, where's Duncan? He said he'd be back before lunch.
Full on now, right?
Yeah, whispers a lot. And then we start hearing a whisper like saying, I want you, I need you. What have you got to live for? You want to die. Why go on? Over and over and over. And then we hear that Abigail giggle from before echoing, but it's kind of distorted. And then we hear Emily say, I'm still here. I won't go away. I'll never go away. I'm in your blood. And it's now been 4 hours have passed, and she puts on she's getting dressed, and we hear distant pounding, which is very reminiscent of The Haunting, right? And the pounding gets louder and louder. Jessica pushes the dresser out of the way of the door, and then the mirror on the door startles her, and she screams and emerges from the bedroom. And suddenly the pounding stops, the music stops, and she's standing outside of the bedroom door, and she looks really small in this space.
Yeah.
I think it's very deliberate.
The house is eating her.
Yeah. Yeah. She walks down the stairs, and this percussive synth music is building, and that coffin-like instrument case is at the bottom of the stairs, and it looks so unusual. It clearly looks nothing like the rest of the house. She's afraid of it.
Huge.
Yeah, it's massive. It's just like tall. It's taller than I am, and she's afraid of it. She eases toward it, eases past it, kind of looks inside because it's standing up, but it's open, almost like a sarcophagus, right?
Yes.
And there's nothing inside. And she leaves the house, and now she runs down the road, and she stops a truck driver who's driving past. And she says, "Will you help me?" And as an actress, she just looks like someone on the street who is clearly struggling with their mental health. And
would you know what I mean? Would you have picked her up? Like, I don't know if I would have picked her up.
We talked about on my last episode. My last episode was about Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and we discussed, would you ever pick up a hitchhiker? And my answer is a strict no. But
right.
I don't. In 1971, this woman is alone, and this whole movie is about female suppression and underestimating them. And so, sure, this guy
people really hitchhiked a lot back then. That was like a real thing.
Yeah.
That was how you got around.
Yeah, I don't think it's something that happens, anymore. She's dazed.
I had an uncle that got all the way to LA by hitchhiking.
Are you kidding? From here?
Yeah. But back in the 50s or early 60s. 60s.
I bet that's a good story. Yeah. Like the people he met, the places he stayed. I bet that's really interesting.
Oh my God. Yeah, he's got a million of them. And he came back from Woodstock. He actually went to Woodstock.
Nice.
And I need to hear more about that story, though, actually. I'm going to pump him next time I see him.
Do it. So Woody gets off the tractor and goes into the house. He's calling for Emily or Jessica. No one answers. And then Emily comes down the stairs in the white wedding dress, and she's dry now.
Right.
He says, "Where's Jessica?" And she tells him she left, but don't worry. She just walked down to town to find Duncan. So we're all alone. And she's being really weird, but really sexy at the same time.
Yeah, it's like a trap.
She says, "Do you like my new dress? My new old dress?" And he tells her, "I see what you've been doing with my friend." And she says, "I thought you liked me." "Well, you know I do. Do you like me now?" "Yes." "Show me." And then they start kissing. And then she goes in for his neck. And here's my thing a little bit about this. He has been spraying the pesticides. He's covered in poison. He tells her, "I need to go shower." And she says, "Do you need to go shower?" And then she ends up biting him, which in my mind is going back a little bit to Jessica biting the apple covered in poison before, right? She's biting him. He's covered in poison. I feel like there's something there, and I'm not placing it right.
Poison's not going to do anything to her. She's already dead. I mean, right. That?
No, you're not. I think by this point, we've all figured out that she's, yeah. So Jessica gets dropped off in town, and she's asking the old men at the general store if they've seen the man who drives the hearse. The hearse is parked right there. I know you must have seen him. And they're telling her no. And these men's bandages are off. And we see that they each have these deep scars on their bodies, on their neck, or the side of the face, or that guy on the inside of his arms. And she, Jessica, we hear whispers, the girl was leading me to the body. She was warning me. She's warning me. She starts running through the woods, and then suddenly wakes up on the ground, and it's dark now.
Such a run through the woods scene. Like, she's really Jessica is having the worst day ever. Really, I mean, like, because this is the same day as the water.
Yeah.
The lake, you know what I mean? Like, she is just like locked herself in a room. She's out of the house. She's running through the woods. They're all giving her the runaround. She's having a bad day.
Real bad. Nothing's going her way.
Passed out on the ground.
She wakes up, and this is another great day for night shot, because now we really don't know what the hell's going on with her. And she hears Duncan calling her name. And he comes, grabs her, holds on to her and says, "It'll be okay. I'll take you home." And she goes with him. And there's fog surrounding the house. It's really spooky looking. They get home and the lights are not working. And Duncan lights an oil lamp and they go upstairs. Her arms are like around him. She relies so heavily on him. She's so dependent on him. And they get to the bedroom. And he gets in bed and calls for her, like beckons to come to bed. And the angel faces on the grave rubbings are watching this happen. And she starts kissing him.
And they're finally, the first time in the whole movie, they're having like a sexy moment. Like it doesn't happen. Like in long-term relationships, you don't get them. Sometimes it dies off, and it's finally kind of kicking in a little bit. And she needs this bad.
Yeah. But unfortunately,
then what happened?
Discovers on the side of his face, like kind of under the ear, into the neck, there is a long scar. I'm a little bit inclined with the lesbian undertones of this film to make the suggestion that these long slits are almost vaginal, but I don't want to go too deeply into this because I don't have the words to express it the way that it's accumulating in my mind. So she sees this scar and Duncan goes in to kiss the side of her neck. And then Emily, in the white wedding dress, approaches the bed and we hear her think, "It's not real, Jessica. It's in your mind. Duncan's mine and you're home now." And Emily's holding that knife.
Right before that happens, when he's kissing her neck, like she's seen the scar, he's kissing her neck, and her eyes kind of like look up. Her head's kind of rolling back and she's sort of giving into it.
Yes.
She's like, this is like I had to say, I jumped out of a plane once and they made me like, when you do it, you attach to some guy and then you're like, all right, look up before you jump in. You can't look down. You got to look up. And they took a picture of me and I have the same fucking face on, just this resigned, gave up. They're going to chop my head off kind of like a chicken. Like she's sort of giving up right there. Like she's just giving up. But then Emily comes in. Now hit it.
That's brilliant. And it is brilliant. And yes, you're absolutely right. She does give in, almost like accepting death too.
Yes.
Emily approaches her holding that knife and goes into the neck. And we don't see it happen, but Emily makes it almost as though she's slitting her neck with this knife. And then she goes in and starts kissing or sucking on her neck. So we've got Duncan on one side of her neck, Emily on the other. And then suddenly the room is filled with the grumpy, mean old guys from town. And they're walking
slowly surrounding her.
So gross. Walking toward the bed. It Ari Aster may have lifted from this for Hereditary a little bit, I have to think. With all of the naked people in the darkness. But so they are getting closer and closer, and she shrieks and she jumps out of Jessica shrieks, jumps out of bed.
Finally loses it. You've been waiting to do this whole movie.
Yeah.
Really, like to just kind of push back.
Yeah. She runs down the stairs and the coffin case is open now and the mute girl is inside of it and her neck is cut and there's blood and Emily got her.
We're never going to get a story of her.
Nope, never. So Jessica runs through the orchard and she sees the tractor spraying pesticides. And when I say this tractor sprays pesticides, it is a geyser of pesticide spraying everywhere.
She is getting it. She's running right in it, like fully drenched, kind of runs through the poison.
Yeah.
Sees dead Woody on the tractor, his throat's back, his neck is all tore open. And she freezes, and then the poison comes back and smacks her so hard in the face. Like, as an actress, that was so amazing. Like, the way that whole scene, like, where she's like, this is the point. I mean, like, I'm sure it was water, but just to think that it was poison, like, is amazing. Smack in the face.
Yeah, I gotta say, I filmed a scene once where I got a glass of water, like, spray or thrown in my face, and it is so hard to act like you don't know that you're about to get hit in the face with water. It's so hard.
She does it great.
That scene is the scene that is so embedded in my mind from when I was a child. It's just like, it's so upsetting to me seeing Woody like kind of splayed back on the seat with his neck slit and just there's some kind of strange beauty in the poison that's just gushing, like spraying out of this thing, Full blast. She starts running again through the orchard and her nightgown is reminiscent of a hospital gown,
totally.
I think. And
Totally.
now suddenly it's the sun is out and it's bright, and she gets to the ferry, and that same old veteran from before tells her the ferry isn't running for you, and he's got a scar on his neck. So she gets into a rowboat that's by the water, and she gets out on the water, and she stops, and then the music stops. This pulsing music has been going, and there's stillness, and then a hand reaches out from the water and grabs onto the boat, and she grabs, is it called a gaff?
Yeah, something with a hook.
Is that what it's
at the end of it?
Yeah,
So it is.
like a stick with a hook. I don't know what they're used. Is it to like pull yourself to the dock?
A mean looking hook. Like a mean looking hook.
She starts whacking this person in the back,
furiously, just like
blood everywhere. She's killing this person, and then the body turns over, and it is Duncan, and she has killed him.
She's killed her husband. And then on the shore, all lined up, is Emily standing there, and she's got like all like the old guys are kind of like standing behind like an army almost. And she's looking at it, and she's like, and you can tell her posture is like, fuck, she got away. Like, I didn't get this one.
Mm-hmm.
And she doesn't really care that Duncan's dead. But she's like kind of bummed that Emily's, she just sort of resigned, and she just kind of turns around and wanders off. And then we're back to Emily. Then we're back to Jessica in the boat.
And we get those same lines from the beginning of the movie. I sit here and I can't believe that it happened, and yet I have to believe it. Nightmares or dreams, madness or sanity. I don't know which is which. And she sits alone on this boat, and she kind of looks down, and then she just slowly, and it's kind of a long shot, right? She's kind of a silhouette along the sunrise. And as the credits begin to roll and the music plays, she just slowly lays down in the boat, and then the boat drifts off like out of the shot.
Amazing. She's so fucked. So she's doomed. She's fucked either way. She's going. It's like the best case scenario is she's going back to an insane asylum for killing her husband.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the best.
Yeah.
The happiest ending for her right there. Other than that, it's back to the island with a killer, or she's dead there, and she just died. Like right. I mean, like, what are her options here?
Yeah, no, that's the options. What is your read about in her head versus really happening?
I think I think that's. I mean, I love that you don't know that that's super like. But I mean, like by the end of it, it's no longer like just her. Like you see it's all happening, and you're putting the pieces together with her, and I loved all that and all the dead bodies, and I don't know, I loved it. I thought it was real.
I think it's real, and I think that I think it's real, and I think that some of it's in her head. Like her imagination is getting away with her because she's dealing with this really bizarre situation. But if you think when they have that seance and she hears someone talk about Abigail's, as a bride and to the bishops, no one has told her about this family yet, but she hears it at the seance. But then also she's imagining them eating this raw bloody meat twice. So I do think there's like a mix. Let me ask you this: who do you think killed the mole?
It's got to be what's her face, Emily.
You think it was Emily? I think it was Emily. I think it's Emily.
Yeah, Emily did it all.
Fucking with Jessica.
Jessica's just like you think she's, and I think that's the beauty of the movie is that you kind of like, do I believe this girl? Like, is this all going to be a dream? But it kind of keeps piling on, so that I feel like we're ruining this movie for people.
When I do these more obscure films, my goal is for people to watch the movie, and people who listen to my show do this, and then they come listen to the podcast because they want to talk about it, right? So I don't worry about spoiling it. These people, if you've gotten this far, you've probably seen the movie already. I just think the movie is a mood. It is unsettling from start to finish. It accomplishes a lot.
I know a couple of people who don't like this movie. They find it too slow. They think nothing happens. They're horrible people. But I know them.
I think for the people that this movie is for, it is a masterpiece, an accidental masterpiece, right? But I have to fully admit that this movie is not for everybody, and I would never ask everybody to watch this or appreciate it. But what I don't like is when people say that movie sucks, because it doesn't. The movie is not for you. And that's fine. But just because you do not like something does not mean that it is bad. There are bad movies out there. This isn't one of them. It's just clearly not for you.
I think it's a masterpiece.
Yeah, me too. And I'm really glad.
1971, gold.
Really glad to see it, glad to know it. I don't get tired of it, and I'm glad we talked about it. Now, I will say, I will ask you this. On Rick or Treat Horrorcast, we have a rating system. A movie is either a trick, which means it's okay, or it's a treat, which means you love it, or it is a smell my feet, which means it sucks. How would you rate this movie? Trick, treat, or smell my feet?
Total treat.
Same.
I think.
Totally the same.
And I can't tell you how many times I've seen this movie either. I feel like I saw it at the end of the 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, like 50 years. I feel like I've been watching this movie, like 5 decades.
Yeah.
You know, from being a little kid and catching it, and like I don't think it was till like the early 2000s that I watched it again and realized Woody got killed. Like I never saw the ending. Like I was kind of just like,
oh right, because
like,
you would drift off.
So because it was always like super late at night, and it's just a movie that it's kind of hard to watch. I mean, it's kind of perfect, but it's a great creepy late night movie, but you gotta like take a nap for it because it could put you out because it's so dreamy.
It's a cozy, dreamy, creepy late night movie. That's I saw it late at night as well.
Did you just watch it last night too?
I watched it last night. I watched it today.
What did you get? What did you get new out of it today?
The scars look like vaginas. That's what I took from it.
What'd you get out of it last night?
You're not buying my vagina scar theory. Last night,
I mean, I get it. It's interesting because they are like kind of slutty, and there's like no women in it. It's like just like all kind. So all the guys are kind of like slaves to her, right? All those old men, they're kind of like she's a queen, and
and the only townsperson who was a woman can't speak anymore and is killed.
And all the old men are like they're mean to the new ones because they're like they're jealous of them. Maybe it feels like they're a little like here comes the hot young blood, and they're kind of like mean and a little standoffish with them, and they don't really take them in until after she bites them on the neck, and then they're like, oh, come on, you can come into the supermarket now. Now you're part of the club. Yeah,
you know what? That's not a bad theory because Duncan got turned and Woody probably would have gotten turned if he had not like called her on, said, I see what you're doing to my friend.
Like totally called her on bullshit. But he's a guy and he couldn't say no.
Oh, man. All right. Well, is there anything else about Let's Scare Jessica to Death you want to get off your chest?
Let's think of all the ways they could ruin it in a remake.
All right, I'm down for this game.
If they remade it, how would they fuck it up? I think the one they would give a terrible prologue. It would over-explain her madness, Jessica's madness. What she went through to end up in an insane asylum. It's number one.
Yes, for sure. I think that we would also get flashbacks to Abigail drowning and the bishop's house. Oh, that's another tie to The Haunting. Abigail is Abigail Crane from The Haunting as well. We would get flashbacks to the wedding day as well. And I think we would have too much lesbianism to where it's not subtle and it's not interesting. And it's just it's Hollywood cashing in on queer baiting.
There would be way more of, they would have to give Emily some CGI monster face. They wouldn't let her just be regular. You know what I mean? Like just creepy face the way she does.
You're right. And it wouldn't be practical makeup either. It would be,
Yeah. She'd be like, but they would get another one of the Voyage of the Damar.
Yeah. And the emerging from the water scene would be way overdone.
Would be Jason. Would be like Jason in Friday the 13th.
Yeah. And then it would become sequel heavy and we would get Let's Scare Jessica to Death again. Or
I don't feel like Jessica could exist in a movie today because she's so like smiling through the pain, kind of like.
Yeah, I don't think she would either, and I think that's what makes this movie such a time capsule. Those early to mid 70s, is it The Haunting of Julia with Mia Farrow, right? Those kind of like pensive, repressed female horror movies that. I think this is one of the better ones. A lot of them are not super good. One more thing to point out, the antiques dealer is the one who uses the word vampire. And yet Emily does not showcase any of the typical vampire traits that we know. You know, she's out in the daylight. She doesn't bite. She kind of cuts someone's neck before, and it's not just her neck, right? She cuts that guy's forearm. She cuts people on the face. Is this a vampire? Is it some kind of ghost? And I think that also adds to the unease of the movie, is that it's still not entirely clear what she is.
Yeah, she's a ghost vampire. What's going on underwater? What's this?
Lesbian.
No, under the water.
Under the water. Yeah. It's a hell of a movie. All right, Uncle Spooky, listen, will you tell my listeners where they can stalk you?
Well, thanks for having me. This was amazing. I love you. Love you for having me. Look me up Instagram, and you'll see all my whatever I'm doing. I usually tell Instagram that I'm about to do it. So it's Uncle with a K, because it looks cool and sounds the same. So Uncle / Spooky. Look up that, and I'll tell you what I'm doing next. Where you can find me. Do you want to come
check him out?
Zoom meeting.
Check out his show.
If you're not sick of Zoom meetings and Tuesday nights, and you want to look at you want to watch me, watch a movie. It's more fun than it sounds.
It's a good time. It's more fun than it sounds. This man is an excellent entertainer and a lot of fun, and I'm really glad to know you. I'm glad you took the time for this. Thank you so much.
I'm so glad you asked me, and I'm glad it finally worked out. I hope this is a winner.
Me too.
Hope this is a rating winner. I can't wait to spread it around.
I think it will be.
All right. Thank you so much, Rick.
You're welcome, and we'll see y'all later, Spookies.
Thanks for coming Rick or Treating. You can follow the show on Instagram at RickOrTreatPod. It'd be a real scream if you'd take a moment to subscribe, rate, and review the show on whatever platform you're listening on. The show's spooky intro and outro music is a cover of Camille Saint-Saëns' Danse Macabre, with orchestrations composed and performed by Lestat von Monlicht. Links to the artist's music can be found in the episode description. Check him out, he's frighteningly talented. Rick or Treat Horrorcast is independently produced by me, Ricky J. Duarte of Rick or Treat Productions. If you like what you heard, tell a friend. If you didn't, well, they're coming to get you, listener.